Social media explodes on International Cat and International Dog Day. And when it comes to sport, well, from dog racing to dressage, we just love watching our four-legged friends put through their paces. So when an animal is perceived to be a victim, the media go mad. The row over Geronimo is a recent classic case. Deemed a threat to the cattle industry because he tested positive twice for bovine TB, although that is disputed, it was decided that he had to go. Preferring put down or put to sleep over destroyed or euthanized, even the language of the story gave away our sensitivities. But frankly, when the fate of an alpaca is attracting nearly as much column inches as migration, COVID and the crime figures, it begs the question, have we got it all a little bit out of balance? I concede it's not new. Back in 1982, I reported on it when the IRA fatally attacked a household cavalry patrol exercising in Hyde Park. The injured horse Sefton, who'd survived, was front-page news for days. With me now is Peter Franklin, who's the associate editor of the Unheard website, and he's written an article in defence of Pen Farthing. He's also a former speechwriter on environmental issues. Good of you to join us. Is the strength of the story, whether it's Pen in Afghanistan or whether it's Geronimo in a field, that really gives it the mileage, or all animal stories work?
Well, strangely enough, this might seem paradoxical, but it's a human interest story. And we can't possibly conceive of all the terrible things going on in the world. We can't process it. So we reduce it down to a human scale and even further down to an animal scale. Sure.
So it was more Geronimo's veterinary nurse owner than it was Geronimo, and it was more cats and dogs than it was Pen Farthing.
I think so. It's because our relationships between our relationships between people are complex. Yeah. Our relationships between humans and animals, well, they're simpler, they're purer. And
but that's no, you're absolutely right to raise that, because that's the nub of it. I completely accept that, and I'm lucky enough, from tortoises via cats and dogs to horses. I live on a farm; it's virtually a zoo. The big difference to me, so I'm a sort of farmer in a way, is that in the case of Geronimo, there was an army of farmers, human beings. There was an army of cattle, fellow creatures, who were at risk because of Geronimo. And in the case of Pen Farthing, there were humans waiting to get out, and cats and dogs got out before them. That's a human story, and someone is the loser in that, and it's the humans.
Well, certainly in the Pen Farthing case, I think we need to be careful about what we assume went on. As far as we know, no human being was prevented from getting out because of the animals. It was because of other factors. It was because of the Taliban. It was because of the bureaucracy.
But you would accept the simple fact that Pen's animals got out, and there are still... We were listening to Dominic Raab this afternoon saying that, the low hundreds of human beings didn't get out.
Yes.
That's a fact.
It is. It's certainly a fact. And so, on the other side of the debates that is hostile to Pen Farthing, they're using the animal story as well to express their horror at the bigger situation. Again, it's a way of looking at something in microcosm, because we can't cope with the bigger truth.
Sure. OK, then I completely accept that point, and there's been a huge row in the media about the coverage of Pen Farthing's story, and a big row between him and various senior military people as well. So let's set that to one side, though. The veterinary nurse said she didn't believe the TB tests, a little bit like the badger rows over culling there as well. But the farming industry, let's go back to that, because I think it's more clear-cut.
Yes.
The farming industry have no doubts at all that bovine TB that can be carried by an alpaca jeopardises their well-being, their livelihood, as well as the livelihood and well-being of their creatures. That's clear-cut. The alpaca had to go.
I do accept that.
Fine.
If it's the case...
Then how about this, then? What was the alpaca doing here in the first place? It's naturally from either South America or I think there are some that come from other parts of the world, but predominantly and famously from New Zealand. As an animal lover, I don't like bringing animals from one environment to which they are accustomed to another.
Well, almost all of our species, farm species, whether plant or animal, originated elsewhere. So I'm not, almost all of them, hardly any of them are native to this country.
I genuinely didn't know that. Perhaps
Yes.
I should. So Frisian cattle.
Probably, yes. I mean, well, all cattle are descended from the European cattle are descended from the aurochs.
But we're looking at pictures there of Geronimo and one of Geronimo's friends, two of them, in fact, I think there. But as a general point, you're talking about evolution, and I completely accept that.
Yes.
And my beautiful show-jumping horses, centuries and centuries and centuries ago, started out in Siberia and the steppes.
Yes.
I completely accept that. But Geronimo lived quite happily in South America. Geronimo should not be here.
Well, I don't know about Geronimo's history, but I've got no problem with bringing in, llamas or alpacas or other South American animals.
Okay.
If they're being looked after well here, that's absolutely fine.
There is a profound political dimension to all of this as well, and I do take your point about it being predominantly, in these cases, human interest stories and what have you. But the history of animal rights protesters over, bunnies smoking cigarettes and rats being mutilated for the long-term good of humanity to find drugs and what have you. There's always been an overtly political dimension to these rows. Does that make your job more difficult in trying to be objective and balanced in saying, look, on the one hand and on the other hand?
Well, is it a right-left issue? I don't think so. It's just that some people just identify more with the immediate, what's right in front of them, the sort of tale of suffering, whereas others, are temperamentally inclined to sort of take the rational view. And I think both perspectives are worth having. And, if you look at all of the social progress we've ever made, a lot of it has been driven by people who are emotional, who are perhaps more soft-hearted than hard-headed. But they make their contribution too. So I really don't like when the narrative is, self-declared intelligent people in the media mocking members of the public for acting out of the best possible motives.
Absolutely fascinating. I love animals, but I'm for humanity as well.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.